Another delusional, unhinged protagonist. How surprising! Hello, and welcome to another video. So today I'm sharing my top books of 2025, and admittedly, I am filming in mid-December. However, I don't typically get a lot of reading done in this month. It's a very busy month for me because it's my birthday, my partner's birthday, and I'm in a family that celebrates both Hanukkah and Christmas, so I feel pretty safe filming this a little bit early. Also, the book I'm reading right now, which is probably maybe going to be the last book I read this year, we'll see, has the absolute ugliest cover. Like, no offense to anyone involved, but truly the ugliest cover I've ever seen in my life. Not that you should judge a book by its cover, but I just don't feel like that bodes well for the book itself. I don't think this is one that's going to be cracking my best of. So I am a Storygraph enjoyer and user. I moved over from Goodreads maybe 2 or 3 years ago at this point. And one of the reasons I love Storygraph, and this is not an ad, I wish it was, but I'm actually just truly an enjoyer of the app. I love Storygraph because it includes a lot of really detailed statistical information, both of your reading year, but also you can do specific time frames. You can look at your reading stats over all time, and I think that's really fun. I love data, as we all do. I mean, that's why we anticipate Spotify Wrapped every year. So here are some stats so you can get a better understanding of my personal reading journey and my personal reading tastes before we get into my favorite books. So as of filming, I've read 46 books this year. My average time to finish was 5 days, and my top genres are horror, thriller, literary, fantasy, and romance. Fantasy and romance I was a little surprised by, but I guess I cannot argue with data. Sure, I don't really think of myself as a fantasy girly, but maybe my perception of myself is completely wrong. Who knows? And my average rating across all of the books I read this year was 3.44 stars. That's pretty good to me. I'm pretty satisfied with that. Last year, I think my average was somewhere around 2.75 stars. I did not have a good reading year last year, so this is a marked improvement, which I am glad for. So I'm counting my top reads as anything that received over 4 stars, so anywhere between a 4.25 to 5 stars. There are going to be 9 books total in this list, and what I'll do is give you a brief synopsis, a spoiler-free plot synopsis, and then we'll discuss a little bit about what I enjoyed. Hi, okay, it's me from the future. I'm just jumping in here to let you know that if you're interested in reading any of the books I mentioned in this video, I'm going to have an affiliate link in my bio for bookshop.org. There, I've made a nice, neatly organized list of every book I mention here, and you're able to shop directly from there. And if you don't know what bookshop.org is, it's a very cool website where you can buy pretty much any book you can think of, and the proceeds from that purchase go towards the local independent bookstore of your choosing. So it's a really great way to support this channel and also support your local indie bookstore, even if you don't have the time or ability to go there in person and shop. Okay, and with that, back to the video. This is a lot. Like, I don't even know if I need to explain this all to you. You're like, just tell me the books you like. I know. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna tell you the books I like. I promise. Okay? And the first book I liked was Passing by Nella Larsen. I gave this 4.25 stars. Let's get into it. This book follows Irene, a Black woman living in Harlem who has a pretty ideal life. She has a successful husband, a beautiful home, 2 sons, and plenty of high-profile events to plan. However, when Irene encounters Claire, a childhood friend of hers, her hold on her perfect life begins to slip. While Irene embraces her Black identity, Claire passes as white, even fooling her racist husband. And as Claire begins to ingratiate herself into Irene's life more and more, both of their existences are threatened. This book was written in 1929, and it's just kind of incredible how relevant and prescient it still is today. I think it's just really amazing to see how race was discussed at the time and how it differs and also remains similar to today. It's an incredible book. And it's not just because it is such a snapshot of race relations in the late 1920s, as well as a snapshot of life in Harlem at the time, but also it's just a beautiful book. I loved the writing style, and there is this growing sense of anticipation throughout the book that builds into anxiety, that builds into fear. And I love how that slowly grows throughout the plot. This book is kind of frustrating in an intentional and well-executed way, where you feel so nervous the entire time and you're just wishing that Claire would go away. And I don't know, in that way, it almost was effective for horror or thriller writing. This is not a horror or a thriller, but I just feel like the technique that Larsen used to build that feeling and that sense of dread is so palpable and effective and just such great work. And this book also has a very unexpected climax that happens towards the end of the book. I fully did not anticipate. So come for the beautiful writing and stay for the thrills, because I did not expect. I mean, I had very limited knowledge of this book going into it. I just knew that it was kind of a piece of seminal work in Black literature and a wonderful representation of the writing that was coming out of the Harlem Renaissance. But man, it was actually legitimately a great book. Sometimes you read classics and you're like, I understand that this was important for the time, but it doesn't really translate to now. This is not the case. My next 4.2 star read was The Haar by David Sodergren. I already discussed this book in my horror romance video, but I loved it, so I'm happy to gush about it some more. This book follows Muriel, one of the last remaining residents of a Scottish fishing village called Witch Haven, which is being systematically bought and taken over to turn into a golf course by an American billionaire. As the threats to Muriel's home and livelihood turn from verbal to physical, Muriel stumbles upon a mysterious sea creature called the Haar, which helps to protect her from harm. Also, the Haar starts off as an amorphous blob, but as it consumes more flesh and blood, it does take the physical form of Muriel's dead husband, which is kind of a win for her. I just really loved this book. It's a quick, easy read. It's short, it's thrilling, so you want to continue to read it, and it's just a total bloodbath. And really, what more could you ask for from your horror? I will say that Sodergren came up with so many new and inventive ways for a mysterious amorphous sea creature to kill someone, and I gotta give him props for that. It was extremely creative. I had a wild, fun time, and the ending is very satisfying. There are some confusing and ambiguous elements to the ending, but overall, you're glad when it's over. Not because you didn't like it, but just glad that the events unfolded in the way that they did. So yeah, if you're a horror fan and you don't mind when things get pretty graphic and pretty visceral, I think this book would be for you. I wish I could recommend this to book club, but my book club is really not horror focused. But I just want someone to talk to you about this book. It's one of those books where you wish you had someone to talk to about it, because some of the things that happen are just, they're buck wild in a positive way. The next book I want to discuss is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. And there is a lot happening in this book, so I'm going to try and keep my synopsis as brief and concise as possible. Set in an alternate version of present day, a civil servant takes up a job at the British Ministry of Time as a bridge. This person is a liaison who acts in an experimental project to bring people from the past into present day. Our main character is assigned as a bridge to Commander Graham Gore, a sailor who died in a frozen tundra in 1847. She has to teach him all about our modern world and how to assimilate into it, all while trying not to fall in love with him. Interestingly, I saw a lot of people online didn't enjoy this book, and I really think a lot of that comes down to poor marketing. I saw this book being advertised as science fiction with romance elements, and I would actually say that this is literary fiction with science fiction and romance elements. Do not go into this book for extensive world building and understandable technology. And I do agree with some of the poorer reviews online concerning the ending. It did get a bit confused and muddled to me, but overall, I would say I enjoyed 80 to 90% of that book, and that's what gave it the 4.25 star rating for me. I enjoyed the slow, almost meditative pace of the novel. I don't mind a book where almost nothing happens if the writing stands for itself, and this certainly did. By having a character so far removed from the present day interacting with someone who is completely modern, we can have really great and interesting conversations about our current condition, the state of society, feminism, race, identity, and those two, especially race and identity, because our main character is mixed race, and a lot of the book is her reflecting upon her identity and lived experiences versus her self-presentation and the way that others view her. This book just hit a lot of the marks for me. It's thought-provoking, but it's also funny and heartwarming and romantic and tense and thrilling, and I wish that it got more hype. I think this is a debut novel, so I'm very, very curious what this author will write next. And my final 4.25 star book, oh, that's a mouthful, I'm glad to be almost done with this category, is All's Well by Mona Awad. I loved Bunny. I gobbled it up. So when this book came out, I bought it immediately. And then I let it sit on my shelf for literally 4 years. Why did I do that? I don't know, because I'm silly. Ultimately, I'm just silly. So I got around to it eventually, and I'm glad I did. And just like Bunny, I loved All's Well. Mona Awad is exactly my type of freak. So this book follows a university theater director, Miranda, as she struggles to put on this year's play, All's Well That Ends Well. And there are a lot of obstacles in Miranda's way. First, the students are hell-bent on putting on Macbeth instead. Her lead actress is terrible, her husband has left her, and Miranda is suffering from chronic pain due to a fall that ended her own acting career. Things aren't looking good. Things aren't looking good. But one thing Miranda has going for her, she is a drinker. So when she ends up at her local bar and a sexy bartender gives her this mysterious, delicious golden drink, suddenly all of her problems are solved. No more mutinous students, no more pain, and everyone's in love with her. So it's kind of like a win-win-win situation, except that she is slowly also going insane and can no longer tell reality from her delusions. Is that a fair trade-off? I mean, to some, like maybe. To her, yes. This book is a total fever dream. I'm pretty sure all of Mona Awad's books are complete fever dreams. Like I said, the main character is very delusional and we have no idea what's actually happening in reality. I don't mind that from my books. I actually enjoy it from my books. So this was a great experience for me. And not only is it dreamy and surreal and feels like an episode of Twin Peaks, maybe if David Lynch took a little bit too much cough syrup, but it's also funny. Like, there are several points where I had to stop and read certain lines out loud to my boyfriend, and then I just made him read the entire book after I finished it. Loved it. Love Mona Awad. That's my girl. And will I be reading the sequel to Bunny? Maybe eventually. I know I just said all that and I was like, I love Mona Awad. Kind of feel like that book didn't need a sequel. But I should just trust her, right? I should just trust her. Moving on to our 4.5 star category, the first book we have is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. This is about a Korean American college student named Ji-won whose life is kind of falling apart at the moment. I read a lot of books about women with messy, shambly lives. But there's a lot going on. Ji-won's father has left their family, her mother is distraught, her sister is lonely and confused, her grades are failing. It's looking bad. It's looking bad. And while all of this is happening, probably because all of this is happening, Ji-won starts fantasizing and dreaming of blue eyes. The blue eyes of her mother's new overbearing boyfriend, the blue eyes of her classmate who won't stop with his romantic advances, and those blue eyes start to look really, really delicious. I read this book in a day when I had the flu, and I would say probably being partially dazed contributed positively to my reading experience. This is very much a good for her book, very much a I support women's rights and wrongs kind of book. Again, this is another novel that really distorts delusion and reality for the main character and for us, the reader. And I would say that, like the haar, the body horror is quite intense. So if you're into that, check this one out. And my next book is Good Morning Midnight by Jean Rhys, another delusional, unhinged protagonist. How surprising! So this is another classic that made it to my list. I believe this was published in the mid to late 1930s, and this book follows our protagonist, Sasha, as she essentially wanders around Paris, reflecting on her past mistakes and relationships, all while making new mistakes and forming new relationships. It's a little hard to describe the plot of this novel because basically nothing happens, or the same things happen again and again. Basically what we have is Sasha wandering around Paris. She goes to a cafe. She does not like the cafe. She feels paranoid. She spends money that she shouldn't and that she does not have. She meets a man. They go to a bar. She does not like the bar. She returns to the hotel in which she is staying. She does not like the hotel in which she is staying. Rinse and repeat. Which is not to say that this is a bad thing. Obviously, this was a 4.5-star book for me. I loved it, and it's also a classic that has endured for a reason. But don't go into it if you are a plot-based girly. I would go into this book if you are mentally sound enough to not be influenced by the protagonist's actions, but mentally unwell enough to also relate to her. Does that help at all? I loved the hyper-cerebral, almost stream of consciousness style writing. It can get quite complex at times, but there is always humor and beauty in it. And this book will really make you want a good, strong cocktail. Moving on to our 4.75-star ratings, we're going to start off with Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Obviously, there was going to be a Grady Hendrix book in here. That's my best friend. It's funny because I saw a lot of people complain online that this book isn't really a horror, but I would argue that sometimes the female experience is scarier than any ghost or demon or vampire could possibly be. The novel takes place in St. Augustine, Florida in the 1970s at Wellwood House, a home for unwed, expecting teenage mothers. And it's here that we meet 15-year-old Fern. She is our protagonist of the novel. She is alone and confused and quickly forms a bond with a lot of the other girls that are living in the home. And despite being under the constant watchful eye of the overbearing staff at the home, they form a bond and this unbreakable friendship. And they also meet a librarian who gives them a book teaching them all about witchcraft and the occult. And with this book in hand, the residents are suddenly able to take back control of their lives, but it comes with a price. This is a horror, yes. There are evil witches and scary black dogs and a particularly nasty scene involving eels. But to me, at the core of all of Grady Hendrix's books, it's about being a woman. It's about how scary and isolating and anxiety-inducing it can be, but also the beauty that can be found in womanhood. As corny as it sounds, this is a book about friendship and love. Out of all the male authors I've ever read, Grady Hendrix has this uncanny way of tapping into the experience of being a woman, which is to say probably that Grady Hendrix has more empathy than a lot of the male authors that I've read. So I would say come for the occult, stay for the trauma bonds. And our penultimate book is The Old Place by Bobby Finger. I really hope I am using the word penultimate correctly. I guess we'll find out. So this is another book I bought immediately upon publication and then just stuck on my shelf for years. And the reason for that is this book, just based on the synopsis, is not one that I would typically pick up. It contains words such as heartwarming, quaint, elderly people. Those are things I typically shy away from when I'm reading. However, I wanted to support the author, Bobby Finger, because he is also the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts, Who Weekly. And then, semi-recently, over the summer, it was my turn to pick a book for book club, and I needed a reason to read this. Like, I knew I would not find the motivation within myself to do so. So I picked this book for book club. Also because it kind of has like a summery beach read vibe. I'm so glad I did. I was wrong. Sometimes you really don't know yourself at all. I loved this book. So this book follows multiple women in the small town of Billington, Texas. There is recently retired curmudgeonly Mary Alice, her best friend Ellie, and Mary Alice's replacement, who is a young woman whose name I can't remember, but she has just moved with her husband from Brooklyn to this small town to be a teacher. There's also a lot of drama and secrets and tense interpersonal relationships, but I feel that I can't really get into those without giving a lot of the plot away, so I will refrain. Honestly, I just found this book to be so charming. It had not a rom-com vibe, but like heartwarming film with an ensemble cast kind of vibe. Steel Magnolias-ish, if you will. So if you're into that, you'll probably like this. And I did originally have this as a 5-star, and then upon reflection, I bumped it down to a 4.75 star because I felt that the ending was pretty rushed. We were basically 80% done with the book, and I was wondering how and when the conflict would be resolved. So that's really my only qualm with it. I think that most people will enjoy this book, even if you're a soulless hag like me. And my final book, my only 5-star book of the year, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I think I literally read this in January, so it was really all downhill from there. Let me look. Did I read this in January? Oh, yeah. See, my mom made me this bookmark, and I put my little books that I've read on the shelf, and so I can tell what I've read for the year. This is my first one, and then I have my second one. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I read that fairly early. It was really all downhill from there. And typically, as with every other book I've discussed in this video, here is where I would give you a synopsis. But I think if you don't already know what this book's about, it's better to go in completely blind. That's what I did, and I'm glad I did it. So I am not going to give you a synopsis. I'm just going to tell you that it is beautiful, that it is dreamlike, that it is a fantasy adventure. Oh, so that's the fantasy. That's the fantasy. I was like, why was fantasy one of my top genres? That was probably part of it. It's a good time. Just trust me. Just read it. Isn't that funny that for my last book, my 5-star book, I'm basically giving you no information and just telling you it's good and to go out and read it? Sorry. It's my video. Just know that this is the type of book that you want to live in. So check it out from the library, pick it up at your local indie bookstore, and thank me later. And that's going to be it. We made it to the end of my best of 2025 list. And I would love to know, what are some of your favorite books that you read this year? Did any of mine make your list? I feel like the chances of that are fairly slim, but if that's the case, that would be amazing, and I would love to know. So I think that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys are having a great day. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.